1,035. That is the number of Indian startup employees that have been laid off this week across India's entire startup ecosystem. Welcome to Backstage with Millionaires. I'm Caleb, your host, and this is what happens when you build your business with the growth at any cost mentality. Because suddenly, when the economy takes a turn and VCs stop pouring money into your startup, then you realize how short your runway actually is. And in order to extend that runway, you're forced to lay off employees. So let's go through all 6 of these companies to find out how many employees they've laid off individually and why. So first of all, we have Gurugram-based edtech startup Udayy, and they are actually completely shutting down. So they're not laying off a specific group of employees. All of their employees have lost their jobs because the company is going out of business. Like many Indian edtech startups, Udayy started during the pandemic, and they were offering live learning courses for children in grades 1 through 5. And things were going great for them during the pandemic. They had acquired users from over 45 cities in India. They had more than 400 classrooms running on a daily basis, and this helped them to raise $13.5 million in funding from investors. Then though, as the pandemic started to come to a close and schools were reopening, students were going back to offline classrooms, things started to get really tough for Udayy. And they tried a couple of things to survive. They explored opening offline education centers, they launched a free app, but none of these things really worked. Their offline education centers were really expensive, and the app was very hard to monetize. As a result, they've been forced to shut down. They've laid off 100 employees in the process of doing this, and they're also going to be returning whatever capital they have left, which is $8.5 million, and they'll be giving this back to investors. Next up, we have Gurugram-based B2B e-commerce marketplace Yojak, which is shutting down its India operations. So Yojak is a 3-year-old startup, and they connect manufacturers in the construction business with small retail stores across India, and they also export construction goods to the United States and the Middle East. They raised their seed round of $3.8 million last year in August, and they were expecting to raise a new funding round early this year in 2022, and so in preparation for this, they ended up hiring a ton of new employees because they were so confident that they were going to be able to raise these funds. As you can guess though, those funds never came through, and so they were forced to shut down their India operations and fire about 140 employees. And now they're just going to be focusing on their exporting business through Yojak Exports. Next up, we have social commerce platform Yaari, and they are on the verge of shutting down at this point. They've already laid off about 60% of their workforce. That's about 150 employees. And this was actually a new venture by real estate giant Indiabulls. Yaari was started in March of 2021, and the idea here was that it was going to compete with platforms like Meesho, Dealshare, Trell, and Shopsy. But these platforms, of course, are heavily funded by investors, and so Yaari just couldn't compete. In fact, it's even been difficult for incumbents like Meesho and Trell to operate in this space. They themselves have laid off hundreds of employees, and so it's no surprise that Yaari was also forced to do the same. And according to a couple of employees who spoke with INC42, there was no longer vision for the app, and it was supposed to work just like Meesho. It was going to be a copy. After burning through money for more than a year though, without finding the success that they were hoping for, the company has decided now that it's just not worth it, and so now 150 employees are going to be losing their jobs. Next up, we have Bengaluru-based upskilling startup FrontRow, and they've laid off about 145 employees. That's 30% of their total workforce, and according to the founder Ishanpreet Singh, the company had to make sure that they had 24 months of runway. And to do that, they had to cut costs, and the jobs of those 145 people are the costs that they decided to cut. Next up, we have Bengaluru-based esports and mobile gaming unicorn Mobile Premier League. They've laid off 100 people, and they're also going to be shutting down their streaming service on their app. Now, the co-founders of MPL told their employees something that I think epitomizes this entire situation. It's what every startup founder is thinking right now, which is that the last few months have been insane. The philosophy of growth at all costs is now reversed. The market is now rewarding profitable growth over growth at all costs. They also told their employees that these layoffs were being conducted to ensure the long-term health and success of the company. And then finally, at the end of our list, we have Dubai-based mobility startup Swvl. Now, Swvl is a bit of an unusual company to have on this list because, like I said, it's not based in India. The founders themselves are not Indian either, but more than 90% of their employees are Indian and based in India. The company currently employs over 1,300 employees, and they're aiming to turn cash flow positive by 2023. And so as a result, they're laying off over 400 people. All right, next up, this video is sponsored by Policy Bazaar, your one-stop shop for everything related to insurance. So if you're the breadwinner in your family, it's really important to provide emergency support to your family in case anything unfortunate happens to you. Maybe you get seriously ill or you pass away, and you can ensure that your family is taken care of by getting yourself term insurance. So the way that this works is that you pay a small amount of money every month for a fixed period of time, a term, and if during this term something unfortunate happens to you, your family gets a lump sum amount as a safety net. And with Policy Bazaar, you get to compare and buy from more than 20 insurers, which means that you can choose term insurance according to your needs. You also get benefits like 24/7 claim assistance, tax benefits under Section 80C, and an option to add extra coverage anytime during your term. So head over to Policy Bazaar by clicking on the link down below and get term insurance worth 1 crore rupees for just 490 rupees per month. And Policy Bazaar has an extra 10% discount if you buy any of their plans online. All right, next up in the news, I know it's all doom and gloom here with all of these layoffs, and specifically a lot of layoffs in the edtech space, but there are exceptions to this rule. There are silver linings here, and one of those silver linings is a man named Ronnie Screwvala. And so we're gonna move into our founder spotlight segment now, because I wanna talk about all of the hiring that he's doing for Upgrad. So there's a lot of startup founders that talk about the importance of building a profitable and sustainable business, but they're just talking. And when push comes to shove and VCs get involved, then suddenly they're building their startup with growth at any cost as the focus and the center of their mission as a startup. But Ronnie Screwvala is one of the founders that is both talking the talk and walking the walk. He's emphasizing building a real business model for his company, and so he's hiring 3,000 new employees for his edtech startup Upgrad. Now, before starting Upgrad in 2015, Ronnie had actually built two successful ventures in the media space, UTV and RSVP Movies. So he's not some inexperienced first-time greenhorn startup founder. He is a seasoned entrepreneur, and he's seen a lot of challenging times besides this current slowdown. Now, speaking about this current phase that India's startup ecosystem is going through, in an interview that he gave to IANS, Ronnie blamed private equity firms for a lot of the current trouble. He said that they put a lot of pressure on young entrepreneurs to keep increasing their valuations after every funding round without concentrating on the core business. The result of this, says Ronnie, is that this puts a lot of pressure on entrepreneurs to get into new business verticals that aren't really helping their core business. And what ends up happening is that these companies burn through a lot of money before coming to the realization that this isn't helping their core business. They've spread themselves too thin, and so they're forced to lay off employees. And we've been seeing this play out in real time. There are a lot of edtech startups lately that have had to do this. We saw Unacademy shutting down its K-12 business. And before you leave a comment saying that I'm a customer of Unacademy, I'm in their K-12 business, you are the last customer batch, and then after this batch, they're gonna be shutting it down. And then we also have White Hat Jr. They had started a mathematics vertical, but later on they had to scale it down because of poor response. Ronnie also pointed out how companies spend a lot of money on marketing, thinking that they are building a brand. He says that the only way to build a brand is if the customer comes back to you, not if you find a first customer. If you want to check out the full interview with Ronnie Screwvala, you can find a link to it in the description down below. But now let's move on to some funding news, and specifically our bird's eye segment. So this week, 16 Indian startups raised more than $1 million, and the number is huge here. $414 million raised across India's entire startup ecosystem. So SaaS startups led the charge this week. They raised a total of $83 million. That's 20% of all of the funds raised, and the leading startups here were MoEngage raising $77 million and Prevere raising $6 million. Now, in a close second, we had Fintech startups raising $82 million. That's 19.8%, and the leading startups here were Slice raising $50 million and Stride One raising $32 million. Next, we have EdTech startups potentially raising $73 million. That's 17.6%, and the leaders here were QMath raising $57 million and Bunzu, who are in talks to raise $15 million, although it's not yet confirmed. And then finally, we have D2C startups raising $55 million. That's 13.29%. And the leaders here were Sugar Cosmetics raising $50 million and Milo raising $5 million. All right, next up in the news, there's a couple of small little startup updates that I wanted to share with you guys. First of all, TechEagle has successfully conducted a drone pilot program where they dropped off mail in the Indian state of Gujarat. This pilot was conducted on Tuesday, Tuesday, and it was done in collaboration with government-owned India Post. This delivery of mail by drone covered a distance of 46 kilometers in less than half an hour, and this was 5 times faster than any surface transportation, according to the startup. All right, next up in the news, Lido Learning might not be dead after all. So back in January of 2022, Lido Learning fired 1,200 employees and they shut down, citing a lack of funds. But now they might be climbing out of their own grave as the company is at advanced talks with Reliance Industries to raise a fresh round of funds. Now, this news is confirmed by the CEO of Lido Learning, who said that they're apparently in the final stages of closing this round, and according to a report, Reliance could even acquire Lido Learning. All right, next up in the news, fintech startup Slice is getting into UPI payments, and for that, they raised $50 million. So Slice is a credit card provider, and they already have more than 12 million customers, and now they want to tap into the trillion-dollar payments market in India. Now, obviously, Slice is not going to be making any money directly from UPI, as UPI falls under the zero MDR policy, but by getting into UPI, Slice wants to offer its customers all of the financial services that they might need, be it credit or payments. All right, that is all the startup news that I have for you guys this week. I really hope you enjoyed the video and that you learned something from it. Big thanks now to all of our Backstage with Millionaires members, our unicorns, our decacorns, and our hectacorns. And of course, also big thanks to this week's sponsor, Policy Bazaar. All right, I will see you in the next one.